optimize my image for that target. Okay, so the whole process is constantly knowing where the issues are and appropriately addressing those issues before they come to bite you. That's what this is about, okay? Knowing where the issues are and being prepared to address them as necessary.
Before you leave, I do have an example of what he's talking about. Because this right here is a little light box which I have a transparency, and it represents the camera. So when you get a chance to put the light on, you have this piece, and it will pretty much sum up exactly everything we're talking about as far as range to print. And then you can have something to compare it to when you come up here and you can look at this image to your reflective piece. You're going to see a lot of information being lost from here to here. So, you know, after we've done with the seminar, I'll have the box on and you guys can look at it and you can kind of compare. And I'll also have some other images that you can look at. So it kind of pretty much sums up everything that we're talking about as far as tone targeting and reflecting and printing and using dots. So actually we're going through the whole process of transmission to reflect. And that's pretty much what this whole color seminar, and then the expectations of what you guys can expect, that when you are dealing in a project and when you're thinking your printer might be telling you a whole bunch of smoke, he really isn't, because he's just dealing with the elements of the different gamuts that he's going from you giving us the file to the printed piece. So I'm hoping that you guys are getting a good understanding on basically
what goes on. And if nothing at all, if you know, some of us may be experts in this, some of us may be new to this, and we welcome everyone. We have the today's technology. We can start and finish just about any publication. That's fine. You're not required to know anything. If you're bold enough to dig into it, come on. We've had a pocket folder done with PowerPoint. And I go, my goodness, what's that? Actually, somebody did a beautiful brochure in Excel, and that blew me away. I'm going, whoa, unbelievable. And the guy's, I think he was a coach for the national, something like that. And he says the brochure is done in Excel. How do you do that? Unbelievable. It looked good. All the folds are right and all. I'm going, wow, unbelievable. I wouldn't think of doing something. But we welcome them all. We just want to be able to present you with information so you can make the right choice. Or at least when you come across something going, oh, wait a second, this might be one of the traps. Let me make a phone call. Let me call Steve. Let me call McCarthy. What should I do here? We might tell you, you know what, in this case, leave it alone. We'll take care of it. We do that all the time. Many times we work on a project. Steve is always quality control manager snooping. So
I was going to say about our little squabble.
We squabble all the time. Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering, as far as every time you shift, you transfer it to a different format, you lose something.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, as far as if you have an InDesign files with TIFFs, and then you create a PDF. Every time when I print, if I print from an InDesign file to a printer, the color is truer. When I print from a PDF, it loses something. Is that correct?
What I believe is that in your export, there is a function for color, and you might be telling it without you knowing,
right,
to actually tell who is to color manage the file. Okay, so you will have to look in your settings, and if you were to put it in a state where it says do not color manage it, okay, then it's going to produce what it is that you have. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that process. Okay.
I've got an interesting situation.
Yes.
We printed a book. The cover was of an explosion. So you've got fiery yellows and reds and that sort of thing. In the end, the tips of the explosion came out in sort of acid green color, which looked a little bit exciting, but the customer said to us, this is not right. It shouldn't have this green around it. And so we took it back to the printer and we said, what could be the problem? We checked the files, all the colors seem to be right, all the way up to lamination.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that I mean, it changed it.
It
That
changes
drastically?
dramatically. I'm actually, I'm gonna show you.
Did you
some
see,
samples
did you
right
see
now.
the printed piece before lamination?
Yeah.
It looked right.
Yes,
You laminate,
yeah.
Yes, it will change.
lamination, varnishes, all those is extra post-processing that adds a little beauty, called beauty coating, right?
Well, it's a thermal process. So what is happening is that it's reheating the ink.
Yes, and changing the color.
As you're laminating, because this is a piece we're gonna talk about as far as, and I have an unlaminated piece, and it made this dramatically dark, because it is a thermal process. So it is heating
It's
the ink,
almost like
therefore it's
you
spreading again.
running the ink all over again, right? You have a problem trying to, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a
I
second.
like this.
Yes.
I like this.
So, we've, converted our inks, color from RGB, which is what we see on screen, to CMYK, which is what we're going to print. One of the biggest things you need to know is, we've been talking about this, range. Range. Your camera is going to capture in RGB. Most of them are set up to capture in RGB. Some of them you can change it and set, capture in CMYK. It's not very recommended. And I'll tell you why. RGB gives you the widest gamut.
Can you show them that?
Okay.
We're gonna show you the different profiles of lab, RGB, and CMYK. And I think that Francis is getting ready to get into, as we've been expounding upon the fact that you lose information based on the color spaces that the file goes into. We'll show you that, and you can get a better idea of what we're discussing as he goes through the different profile processes. Oh, that's it is. Looking for, video.
So, a profile is a way to
Is everybody familiar with this?
characterize.
Is everybody familiar with the functionality of what we're getting ready to show you here? This is representing the RGB color gamut.
It's the range of colors that you can obtain within the RGB color system. And it's trying to demonstrate that to you in a three-dimensional way, that when you use the RGB color system, this is about range. And, for now it's like, okay, so,
Color depth.
because you don't know, how do I know what else I'm comparing to? So let's see if we were to compare this to something else. So typically, your consumer products, your cameras and your computer monitor and other consumer products that you use out there, your smartphones and all, would have an sRGB setup. It's become the default color profile that you like to use. Okay, and that's what you have. Now let's compare that to, say, an Adobe RGB system. So within the RGB system, we're comparing them to each other. So I'll come down here and hold this for comparison, and I'll show the Adobe RGB. So
You want to turn the light down for a minute?
yeah.
There'll be a white
Actually,
outline.
let me reverse that and see if it will come out better. Look for comparison. Yeah.
All right.
So the white outline is the Adobe RGB that I showed earlier. I held it for comparison because without showing you, one thing in comparison to the other, it's like, okay, so this is the range. So, okay, it seems to me like that's a lot of color. But if I told you that the white area includes color that is not absent from the smaller gamut that you see inside of it, which is your sRGB, right? That is the sRGB zone. That's all the color you're going to get if you were working in that zone. okay? In that space, excuse me. Thank you, Steve. And so you can see that there will be a lot of color that you've lost, okay? It doesn't mean that whatever it is that you're looking at is going to look terrible. I mean, after all, you know, a lot of the consumer products that we use, I mean, we're pretty happy with, you know, going through your smartphone and images that are displaying and all that, you're happy with it. But when you compare it to other, you know, profiles, then you see really how much you're losing. If the Adobe RGB is here, the sRGB says, this is all I can give you. It basically truncates and drops off a bunch of color. You're working with less. So if you bought a camera, chances are you'll set up this sRGB. That may be your default. You can change it to Adobe RGB. You just need to read your camera's instructions and figure out how to set it.
So essentially, you're capturing more information.
While you're capturing, remember we talked about capturing stage, right? If you just took the camera and used it as is, depending on what it is that you're doing with it. If it's just sending pictures for publication, drama, and what, come on, sRGB is good enough, right? But if you're a professional, or you're going to use these images for printing, purposes and whatnot, wouldn't you want to get the most you can out of the image? We'll talk about all the tones and all the color and the range and all. You want to get the most you can out of it, right? So the way you do it is to set your profile for one that will capture the most. And Adobe RGB will capture more than your sRGB will. Okay. On the other hand, if you are working with an online photography printer and they say, hey, we work with sRGB, then give them sRGB. Okay, because that's what they're requesting. They probably have their own little setup because it doesn't, the color systems don't work by themselves. It's got to be printed on something. And we did optimized or targeted their profile to work with certain inks and certain papers because it's a system. In the end, you're not going to look at the image on screen and that's it. You're going to end up putting it on paper and using certain pigments and whatnot. And if they have their system worked out and they get the most they can out of that sRGB system, then don't mess with it. Just give them what you're asking for. Okay. But you can see the range, and this is where offset printing is. Okay, if you were to compare that to the sRGB system. So your camera, you set your camera to Adobe RGB to give you the most you can get in tones and color. But we don't print sRGB. We print CMYK. So we're going to have to convert that image from one color mode to the other. And when we do, that's all you're going to get. Again, one of the innate issues that are with the printing process. It's not because the printer doesn't know what you're doing. Printer A, B, C, D, it doesn't matter. That's all you're going to get. That's all you have to work with. So your camera may have captured the white area without image. Of course, it's transmitting on the screen and it looks bright and vibrant. And then you print it and it's almost like the wind that kind of sucked out of it. But we know that's going to happen. And our job is to figure out the best way to get the most we can out of that, based on also the type of paper we're printing on. If we get the most out of here and we take this image and put it on coated paper, it's going to look one way. If we take the same image and put it on uncoated paper, it will look a different way.
So it's important, you want to go to color settings, that when you either supply the printer with RGB files or you guys do the conversion, understand what you're converting to. And that's very important.
So ultimately, you're going to end up converting your image from RGB to CMYK, so we can print. Photoshop is set to do that by simply going to image edit. I was going to bring up, well, for now, let me just do it.
Color settings.